WNST week. At least the Orioles have a little bit more pitching here this week, but certainly over the weekend with the lousy weather, and I went to the UMBC game on Sunday. Beautiful job they're doing down there, and Coach Odom's troops beating Albany, which was nice. It looks like they're going to be playing a little home tournament down there, but the real story of the weekend happened on my timeline on Sunday morning when somehow, someway, on a snowy night far away in Harford County, the Four Horsemen got together again. This guy brought the whole thing together, and it's really been a whirlwind of a weekend. I want to welcome Dan McDevitt in. Everyone knows him from MCW. If you've had anything to do with local wrestling around here over the last 2 decades now, his deal's about as old as my deal. He began his operation in July of 1998. I began WNST in August 3rd of 1998, so we're sort of brothers in arms here and passing ships as Orioles and Ravens and wrestling do. Dan, I want to welcome you back in, man, but, the whole weekend started, I'm sure, in the same way with you with the death of Scott Wagner and how many people Scott touched, and then this thing you did on Saturday amidst the snow showed up all over my timeline, and I'm devastated that I didn't get my picture taken with the Horseman, but I got to tell you, man, you made a lot of really cool things happen on Saturday night, bro, so I just wanted to tip my cap to you, man. Welcome in.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for having me back. It's always good to be back on. And yeah, it was a crazy weekend. For not just with everything, there was like getting the Horsemen and getting them in, and then the snow happening, and we were stressed out with that. And 300 shows I've promoted in 20 years, a little over 300 in 5 different states, and I've never had something like during an event happen that, like, from a personal standpoint, just took me out of the game. But all that happening, and then about, 10 minutes before the show start, one of the mutual friends came running up to me, my friend Jeff Jones, and said, oh my God, Scott Wagner died. And it was just like a punch right in the face. And I was just rattled. And just like I was trying to get my bearings together, and we're trying to start the show, and it, the weather was just, it was a rough night all around. At the end of the day, we got through it, but yeah, then when the news came, it just, I had to get my bearings together to try to get the show, get started and go on, but at the same time, kind of try to, get a grip on that news that was dropped on.
Well, I found out at 3 o'clock, and, Ray Bachman, who still I'm very close with, who produced this program for the better parts of In and Out 2 decades, and DJing at a cool place near you sometime soon as well, reached me. And, I think we all had a similar experience with Scott, especially if you met him back in the 1990s when he was literally one of the hardest working dudes and one of dudes that just everyone loves Scott Wagner. There was an infectious energy and an enthusiasm and a belief and a get it done. He was a get it done guy, right? And a dreamer, like me. I mean, he was a Ferndale guy. I was a Dundalk guy. I met him before I had NST, Dan. I mean, I met him when I was DJing weddings and parties and bar mitzvahs. And, I'm going back to the music game this week. I got Rob Halford on this week and Michael Schenker from UFO, and they're coming in and doing a couple of shows here locally. Priest is going to be playing down at Anthem, and I'm so excited about talking to Halford. But the beginning of all of this was like I was a DJ in the early 90s when I left the Sun, and doing radio as sort of a part-time gig, trying to figure out how to do sports radio in 1992, 93, 94. And they had weddings down there 6 times a week in Michael's 8th Avenue, and I was DJing weddings and parties. And I went down there, knocked on the door, and literally went up to the second floor where he was in there with Mike, and I remember meeting him for the first time, and the next thing you know, I'm loading the back of my Jeep in the back and loading in my music into the side door, and they had the best food there, right? Like, if you did a wedding it's at Michael's 8th Avenue in 1993, 4, 5, not only did you have pretty brides, you played a lot of cool music. Everybody there loved rock and roll, you know what I mean? It was a great Glen Burnie sort of place to be in the early 90s in a lot of ways, and he was just such a great guy, and he was always overwhelmed, right? Like, there was always food in the kitchen, celebrities in here, something was going on. You had a bride upstairs he had to take care of. He had a funeral party down the hallway down here. The unions were coming in and throwing bull. I mean, Dude, he was an incredible, incredible dude, and it struck me like a punch at 3 o'clock, and just how all of this has come together over the weekend that brings somebody like you and somebody like me together. Tell me your story with him, because that's the beginning, and dude, I'm going to go on here probably for a couple of days finding more people like you and Jake and Ray and anybody else who loves Scott. Wanted to talk a little bit about Scott and preach a little bit here, because I think he did so much for boxing, and I think about what he did for my life and helping me feed my family in the 90s before there was any NST. I had my Nice Guy Awards there. The amount of celebrities that I drug into his hall, right? And I mean, from Cal Ripken and Brian Billick many times, and Ray Lewis and all of that stuff, John Ogden, all those people that my wedding was there, your wedding was there, but like the wrestling thing, he sort of the spiritual godfather of MCW in a way?
Yeah, he is, and our story was when we started in 1998, and me and my partner then, we were young, hungry kids in our 20s, and we had worked so hard to get MCW started.
By the way, it sounds a lot like Scott Wagner and I, like, right? You know what I mean? Like, literally, like, I was trying to make this radio thing, you're trying to make a wrestling thing, Scott's trying to figure out how to take a hall, right, and make it weddings, Morrissey shows, boxing matches, wrestling matches. Hell, he'd have done roller derby down there. I know he would have.
Yeah. And it would have. And it's so we were running at that Patapsco Arena, and we did 4 shows there, and then and we had a.
By the way, did that turn into the Rock Hall? Was that the same place? That would for 5 minutes, 38 special play? Am I nuts?
I'm not sure. It's right there at the Patapsco Flea Market, the building that they turned into a concert venue. And no hard feelings, but we came in strong with our first couple shows, doing 1,000 people, and all of a sudden,
is that with Axel Rotten?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, Axel was the guy that broke me in, but he wasn't one of the owners of MCW.
But he was on those. He was a big deal in '98. He was doing ECW up in Philly, right?
He was.
Yeah.
He was, and unfortunately, he ran into his personal problems but back then he was one of our guys. He was like one of our guys that helped us out a lot. But so with the Patapsco Arena, just suddenly, the owners all of a sudden after one show pulled us in the office, and basically our rent was drastically changing. Just to the point of being unaffordable, like no way we could do this.
I'm familiar with that concept. When I got WNST, the guy rented it to me until he found out that I was like making money. Then all of a sudden, the property tripled, and I'm like, maybe I raised the real estate around here. Maybe
quadrupled really.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then at the time, that was a crazy time in wrestling. That was when the Monday Night Wars was going on. And everybody was watching pro wrestling, and there was Stone Cold and the NWO. But what happened was the content of wrestling at that time went so adult oriented. They had Sable out there,
crotch chop, the whole deal,
naked and karate chopping, and Steve Austin was giving the middle finger, and DX was telling people to suck it, and it was very adult oriented. But it really took the kid audience away, and also created where a lot of people were really offended by the content and like, oh, this is awful. So wrestling had a bad rap, and then there was ECW that was doing tables on fire matches and barbed wire. So it began to get this really barbaric, adult-oriented reputation. And then so many buildings that we looked at that could do pro wrestling were like, well, we're not interested.
We don't want somebody dying here tonight, basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and so we were getting frustrated because we were running monthly, and we didn't want to lose momentum on the first couple shows. So I just, on a whim, we called that building, and we knew they had done a bunch of stuff, and Scott called me and my partner in for a meeting, and I think we were supposed to have a 30-minute meeting, and we talked for like 4 hours. None of which really had almost anything to do with wrestling. It was just about
like every other conversation any of us had to do with Scott Wagner.
Yeah,
right?
Like our dreams and our goals and what it was. And
it was amazing that he knew how to treat people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like when Ray hit me yesterday, the first thing I thought, which was the first thing anybody thought, because we all knew Scott had demons, right? Like, and
exactly,
we knew we all had suspected the worst for a long time, but I don't think any of us ever in the beginning of a relationship with him. He just was. He was one of my favorite people. He really was. I think anybody who met him in that era would feel that way about him. You know, there's no doubt about that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and we left it, and he expressed, you know, his dad. You know, we knew his dad was a former state senator, and he expressed,
and one of the wisest men ever, right? Like, if you needed to get something done, you ask Mike, and he not only knew a guy, but knew a lot about it and would tell you the best way to do it so you could save yourself money, save yourself a headache. Dude, he was like an encyclopedia of how to, like, get stuff done. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
when politicians got stuff done back then, right? Literally, you know?
All around, just incredibly successful man and very brilliant. You know what I mean? So,
and all of that was imparted onto Scott, right? And Scott turned that into how to throw wrestling matches on a Wednesday, Christmas parties on a Thursday, bull roasts on a Friday, weddings all day on a Saturday, church fiascos on a Sunday, and after that, he'd bring Morrissey in or bring a rock and roll band in there. I mean, it was really mind-blowing how that the amount of energy and probably the numbers they did, the number of people and the number of just sheer volume of different people from different walks of life that walked into Michael's 8th Avenue during that period of time.
Right. Yeah, and what started as like, hey, we'll give this one chance, and then we'll get together after and see how it went and discuss future bookings. And then we ended that turned into every month for the next 5 years. We probably did 40 shows there. You know what I mean? So, it really was. It became our home and the place that really helped us get our feet under us as a company.
Dan McDevitt joining us here, MCW, of course. Now, on to what happened Saturday night, and I did call you, believe it or not, for that. I mean, I started seeing Ric Flair pictures on Sunday morning. I'm like, dude, I got to call McDevitt. Something happened Saturday night, we're going to talk about this. And then the Scott thing happened in the middle of, it became clear to me that there was some reason. There was some greater calling here. And I guess for you probably as well. I mean, dude, Ric Flair probably could have, should have, might have, would have died, right? Like I think we're all aware of his story, right? I mean, he should not have been there. I think every moment, kind of like my wife. My wife's now survived 2 bone marrow transplants. Anywhere she is a good place to be. You know what I mean? And a place that maybe under ordinary circumstances, without some sort of divine intervention as well as modern medicine. But tell me about Nate. Tell me about getting this thing together. Look, you're no stranger to this. You've booked them all. There's no star too big or small if they're alive. And, of course, my dear friend and lifer, pal Kevin Eck, and doing the last thing with Roddy Piper at your place. I mean, you've built quite a legend over 20. I mean, I always tell you this, man. I stand in great admiration for what you've built. But I felt like Saturday night was another one of those nights, like when I bring Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh and Brian Billick together on a stage, that most people don't do that. Most people don't bring the 4 Horsemen in Harford County and say, come down and get a picture with them. You're the guy that made that happen. And I know I just saw a lot of smiling people, man. I mean, literally.
It was special.
I'm envious, dude.
Nights, man. It was one of those special nights, and Tully and Arn and J.J. Dillon, they were legitimately overcome with emotion at how the people, and when they came back from their in-ring appearance and the people were just going bananas. It was 1,500 people. It's the biggest crowd we've ever done. They beat our previous record, which was the Hardy Boys, right before they went back to WWE last year. You just couldn't fit another person in the building, and they were just so, and that what they were overcome by is they said that there were 7, 8-year-old kids that were like, oh my God, the 4 Horsemen, and they were like, we haven't been together for 25 years. How is this? Like, it was just like Arn said, like, the emotion was overwhelming of their legacy, of what they left. Like, we haven't been in there. 7 or 10-year-old kids that are like, oh my God, I can't believe we're meeting the 4 Horsemen. It's obviously like YouTube, and they say, in the WWE Network and all these things that have allowed their legacy to live.
It's like in NFL films, right? I mean, literally, even though you and I lived through it, remember it all, and, I go back to Bruno and Billy Graham. Look, you sat here in my studio the first time my wife was battling cancer and brought JR in here, and he's now had this incredible tragedy as well. I mean, life takes us on many, many turns, right? But part of this is living long enough, right, to see what became of Ric Flair? You know, the rest of the story, right? At the end of the Animal House episode 1978, what became of them? And all of them have had, in some cases, tragic tales, triumphant tales. The Andre the Giant thing's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I'm fascinated by that, and I'm going to be talking about that in a couple of weeks. And then there are guys like you that fulfilled your dream of bringing these guys together. And I share that pride. I know what it's like to have a night where you stand on stage with legendary, standing on the shoulder of giants, literally. Talking about Michael's 8th Avenue. There are nights I have pictures of nights where Artie Donovan is sitting next to Brian Billick, sitting next to Cal Ripken, sitting next to Mike Flanagan, sitting next to L. Rod Hendricks and Bob Ehrlich's the master of ceremonies, and David Modell's over in the corner with the Lombardi Trophy. I mean, we've had crazy nights, but the Four Horsemen, that stands for, because they're alive, right? Like, it's like getting a big, right? I mean, it's like getting a picture with the Beatles. No one has one because Lennon didn't make it, And, it's an incredible thing, and I think it overwhelms people with all that pieces of that night at Georgia Championship Wrestling in 1981, the first time, Crockett and all that stuff that you and I know from what we would say shoot or kayfabe or, whatever. But pull the curtain back here, dude. Where do these guys live now? What do they do? How does a guy like you get them together, man?
Well, number one, I mean, it's not like, because of what we've done, all the stars, like, not a pat on our back, but we have a very good reputation now to the point where we're pretty much, everyone has heard of us, all the biggest stars, and have heard of the way we deal with things. And we've dealt with Rick. This was the 5th time we've dealt with Rick.
Yeah, you got his number, and now it's like, can we all get one night where I can get all of you together, I'm trying to do that with Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. It's hard to do, man. It's hard to make ships align,
especially because, Ric Flair is obviously everything he's dealt with health-wise, and even when he's not, he's so big. I mean, they still have him, and that the ESPN 30 for 30 thing just kind of like revived him. But the NFL, like, all the teams are always doing stuff where, like, one of the teams are, you know what I mean, the Colts or something.
Well, dude, I'm the guy that goes to the road game. So, like, when you're in Charlotte, he's on the scoreboard half the game, literally.
Right. So he's still. He's busy, and Arn is full-time with the WWE backstage. He's an agent, a producer backstage, so he's on the road a lot. And then Tully is doing a lot of stuff, and Barry Windham has his own business. So the tough part was finding a Saturday night where all of them were available.
And, of course, it's the night when it's snowing, right? I mean, when not to do it? How about the middle of February on a Saturday? It's like a bus trip to a Caps game. Right. Dude, there could be a foot of snow. I just don't do stuff in the middle of February like that because it's a risk, right?
And listen, we've had those discussions. We've been doing this 20 years. Like, the only option is, like, me and my partner, it's like, don't run shows in December, January, February, and that's our only option, but we don't want to do that because actually where it's a double-edged sword is for, like, indoor events like pro wrestling. We do our best business January and February.
Right, because people want to get out.
Inside for a couple months, they want to get out. There's nothing to do, so it's like that's the double-edged sword. It's like, okay, we could not take the risk, we do the best business on those 2 months. Obviously, again, not just because it was the Horseman.
What the hell else are you doing on the 3rd weekend of February, right? Like, you're not at the ballpark. You're not at the race. Right. I hear you. So there you go. Well, you are going all, straight shoot on me here. I like this. So
right, yeah.
So when did it come together? Like, I mean, at that point where you feel like you got a date, there's 5 of them. I mean, this has been done before, right? Like a guy did in Charlotte a couple times, right?
Yeah, well, they even said last night this is only the 5th time they've done an appearance, all 5 of them with J.J. Dillon in 25 years. This was number 5. It's only the 5th. They told us that last. And they told the crowd that, and they said this is only the 5th time. Like that promoters have been able to work out schedules and also make it work. And then there's like guys like Arn, who's with the WWE. He just doesn't want to go to some, no offense, but like hole-in-the-wall promotion or promotion he doesn't know. So Arn's very picky about, like, because he's with the WWE and all, well, like, who's the promotion and what's their background? You know what I mean? And, like, he wants to make sure it's going to be a good event, not some fly-by-night,
Totally understand. I mean, and that's the way it should be, man. We're all trying to do things the right way and in a way that that makes us comfortable, right? Like literally.
Right.
And that's part of these guys is getting to know them. If they're comfortable with you, then and knowing that you're going to do a good job. I mean, these things can be a fiasco for these guys if they're not run right.
Right. So yeah, it came together. I think in like December, like towards around Christmas time or so, where it was like bingo, because it would like you're texting all of them and just with dates, and they're like you'd get a text back from like 3 of them that are like good, and then like Tully would say like, no man, I'm going to be in Texas that weekend. It's like, you know what I mean? And then finally it was
back to the drawing board.
February 17th, and it was like good, bingo. Like we got a date, you know, we got a Saturday. That's and then we we obviously jumped on it, got our contracts together once they were all cleared, and then we put it in, and we were like, man, it was a lot to make that happen and come together, and me and my partner were just really happy. You know what I mean? And for wrestling fans in general,
and then you cross your fingers and hope that Rick stays okay, right? Or that they all stay okay, and that the weather stays okay. And it turns out Rick was better than the weather.
Right. So yeah, and and even then, I mean, we were monitoring it the couple days leading up to it, but we just felt like, you know, I mean, here's the thing about wrestling fans, man. Wrestling fans are some of the most dedicated fans in the world, and I've wrestled when I was wrestling actor. I wrestled in shows where there were full houses and it was a snowstorm out. Man, wrestling fans, if there's something special and something they want to be at, they're going to come. So when I saw like all the reports just kept saying like it wasn't starting until 5, and I was just like, man, we can make this happen. The fans are going to show up. They're going to show up because it's the Horseman.
Kind of reminds me of when I went to Blood Circus with Ox Baker. I was going to show up.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your awful promotion of the century, right? There's exactly the thing that the Four Horsemen don't want to show up for.
Right.
And you and I are the only ones who know what the hell I'm talking about, I guess. But there's probably somebody in your community that'll say, you were at the Blood Circus? Yes, I was. So was Kevin Eck. We went together on the number 10 bus.
Right.
Got Gino's chicken across the street, and that's all we got that day.
That's funny. So yeah, man, and they did. They came out. The fans came out. It was unbelievable.
Did all 1,500 people meet the Four Horsemen? I mean, I had a dozen or so, and I'm sure there was a price tag associated with it, and all that. But it was certainly professionally. It almost looked like you went to Olin Mills with the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. It was good. No, but probably 500. I'm saying
wow.
It was just, there was some complications that, you know what I mean, with getting that many people through and the weather, and we had to start the show late, but at the end of the day, we got it done, and that's how those live events are, man. 300 events over 20 years, and you always learn there's always a different problem, and it's constantly, from the time the doors open, there's just 15 fires that I'm running around with a fire hose putting out all night.
All right, man. Well, look, when you get Bruno and superstar Billy Graham together and whatnot, let me know. We'll promote the event. We'll help you out with that. But I don't know how you top. I mean, I guess my point is, you're not bringing Andre back, right? So, I don't know how. That's probably the weird part for you. It's like, man, you put it together when the night's over and everybody went home, and you have that, that beverage, at the end of the night or whatever. You're like, all right, now what am I going to do? How am I going to top this one?
There's only 3. Me and my partner always talk. There's only really like 3 toppers that we can top what we've done. It's Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock, for signings. I don't think The Rock's going to happen because I'm not sure with he's getting $30 million a movie. I'm not sure if we could meet his price tag.
When I went looking for Scott's pictures, I found that night, and you talk about that era in '98 where you started. We had done a show in early '98 at a Raw show at the Arena, a TV show, where we partnered with the WW, then F, I guess, right? They didn't have the F out it yet. And my God, that night, Kevin Eck and I hosted literally live radio. We dropped an ISDN line in. We had a room down there in room 101 or wherever it is on by the dressing rooms, and literally one by one, every character came in. And the main event at that point, The Rock was not The Rock. He was just sort of up and coming. And with Mark.
Maivia, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and wrestling with, he was on our set with Mark. Well, either way, the top of the card was Mick Foley, who was doing the hand sock thing at the point, and Stone Cold was Steve Weiser and had his Stone Cold shirt and all that. But there were no jabronis yet or any. None of that was. We weren't there yet. And the thing that broke my heart, bro, because I looked through all of my pictures Saturday and Sunday, literally searching for this picture that I took with Scott Wagner. It always comes back to Scott, right? I was researching a picture with Scott Wagner, Michael Steele, Bob Ehrlich that we took at a Ballroom Boxing in 2003. That I'm sure was a very funny, joyous, smiling version of Scott, and I wanted to find that picture up on that second floor. But instead, I found a picture of Owen Hart.
Oh, yeah.
With us that night. McMahon sat with us, Gurria. My God, it was the whole company came out. Pat Patterson, and they all sat in with us, and we have these incredible. Jerry Lawler, the King, was there that night. So it was quite a show. That and that was sort of the only night that I had that. Now I look back on those pictures 20 years later, and I'm like, wow, what a night that was.
Right.
Ray Bachman loves that he had a flat top in all the in all of those pictures. When's your next event? Plug what you're doing. Tell everybody how to find you guys at MCW, man.
Well, you can go to www.mcwprowrestling.com. We have an event on Saturday, March 24th at our place, the MCW Arena. But our next really big event is April 21st, I believe. It's a Saturday night. And that's our Tribute to Legends convention, and right now it's being headlined by Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels and Big Daddy Cool Kevin Nash. Anybody remembers they were the founders.
They were a big deal back about then. Yes, I remember that. Yep.
So, and that all can be found at www.mcwprowrestling.com.
Hey, dude,
get all the information.
I appreciate all you do, man. And anytime you want to bring anybody around here and talk about old wrestling or, talk about the old days or talk about Scott Wagner, certainly an open door. And I know we're all in mourning, and I know we're going to be celebrating Scott's life this weekend down at Michael's 8th Avenue. I'm probably going to drop by there on Saturday, and I know a lot of old friends will, too. I can't imagine there's a room big enough for that one, I would think, for a guy who did so much for so many people, including you and I. So tribute to Scott, tribute to the Four Horsemen, a tip of the cap to you for sure for throwing quite the hootenanny on Saturday night up there in Harford County. Good luck moving forward, man. It's always good to have you on,
man.
Dan.
Okay, always a pleasure.
Take care of yourself. Dan McDevitt from MCW, also doing the real estate thing. Go find him out on Facebook, Twitter. He's out there, LinkedIn, and throwing wrestling matches 20 years later. Living the dream, as they say. Woo! I missed it. How did I miss it? I don't know whether I would have driven in the bad weather or not. I just didn't know about it. If I would have known about it, it's a chance to meet Nate. I mean, come on. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vaults 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. We're going to have a whole bunch of conversations here this week. We've got new pitchers. We've got the NFL Combine coming up next week. I'll be in Indianapolis. We've got new visitors stopping by this week, some rock and roll, some Rob Halford, Michael Schenker joining us from MSG, and the Scorpions and UFO. So it's going to be a little heavy metal, a little hard rock, a little sports, a little Scott Wagner appreciation. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.